What's up, investors? It's the Russian dude. You might assume that Vladimir Putin's grip on Russia's region is rock solid, especially with the war in Ukraine swallowing more and more manpower every month. But just take a closer look and the picture starts to crack. Power inside the Russian Federation is no longer neatly centralized. No, it's splintering. Economic exhaustion, political burnout, and the total absence of real civil rights. All of these things are creating openings. And local power brokers, they can most certainly feel it. They sense the moment, and this is where our old friend Ramzan Kadyrov steps into the frame. The authoritarian ruler of Chechnya is not just playing a loyal subordinate anymore. He's been methodically expanding his personal security and militant network far beyond Chechnya's borders at this point. Moscow may still chant slogans about unity and loyalty, but when Kadyrov moves to control security structures and religious institutions, the message is obvious and crystal clear. He is operating on his own will. Slowly, deliberately, he is slipping out of Putin's hands while assembling his own sphere of influence. And I mean, why shouldn't he? His health deteriorates, succession dilemma is unclear, especially with Adam's most recent car crash that left him in questionable condition. So it only makes sense Kadyrov Sr. wants to ensure the stability of his last years and hopefully peaceful transition of the power. Worst case scenario for the Kremlin, he might attempt to put himself into Chechen history books by doing something good for the region. Finally, for the first time. Like a separation or something, I don't know. Wink wink. The possibilities are endless, basically, especially when you have thousands of ultra-loyal warriors under your own personal control. From Gudermes to the Kola Peninsula, from the Chechen-linked militant group VOIN to a calculated push to establish an alternative muftiat in Ingushetia, Kadyrov's footprint grows heavier by the very single day. And Putin, well, he looks either incapable or unwilling to stop it. Maybe the war in Ukraine consumes too much attention, or maybe the Kremlin simply prefers not to notice that once an obedient vassal is carving out a mini-empire inside the state. So today, let's break down how this Chechen strongman is consolidating power, building parallel control mechanisms in Russia's northern regions, and weaponizing religion in Ingushetia to quietly undermine Moscow's authority and control. Once you see how these networks take shape, you start to wonder whether the Kremlin is actually in control. Well, doesn't look like. Or whether it's just all an illusion propped up by fear and propaganda. Before we talk about Kadyrov's penetration into places like Murmansk, we need to start where it all began. The Spetsnaz University in Gudermes, Chechnya. Founded in 2013 and ceremonially named after Vladimir Putin himself, this facility has trained tens of thousands of fighters from across Russia. Officially, it exists to strengthen the country's defensive capacity. Unofficially, it's just something else entirely. This is not a training ground, it's a political tool. A loyalty factory controlled by a man who treats allegiance as currency and has never hidden his appetite for influence and power. From the very beginning, Gudermes was marked as a crown jewel of Russia's defense infrastructure, with Kadyrov theatrically displaying his closeness to the Kremlin. The symbolic peak came in August 2024, when Putin personally visited the site. He toured the grounds, praised the trainees, and delivered glowing words about their courage. One line particularly stood out. He basically said, "As long as we have men like you, we're absolutely unbeatable." Sounds pretty patriotic until you read between the lines, as you always should with Putin's speeches. If this man answered to Kadyrov, then it is Kadyrov who ultimately decides where their loyalty and force are directed. According to the official figures, more than 47,000 servicemen have passed through Gudermes since 2022, nearly 19,000 of them labeled as volunteers. But volunteers to whom? And for what exactly? Take Sergei Ryazantsev, for example, a Gudermes graduate from Olenigorsk on the Kola Peninsula. He returned home proudly displaying the Spetsnaz University insignia, bringing back not just military training, but the ideology cultivated in Chechnya. Local officials celebrated him publicly, portraying him as a hero of the war in Ukraine. Yet, his online history reveals participation in earlier conflicts, including operations in, guess where? North Caucasus. His story captures Kadyrov's strategy perfectly. train men in Chechnya, then send them back to distant regions with reshaped loyalties. And bit by bit, this creates a web of influence that stretches far beyond Grozny. On paper, Gudermes serves national defense. In reality, it binds regional paramilitary networks directly to Kadyrov. Recruits from poor provinces and larger cities alike undergo a blend of combat training and ideological conditioning that elevates Chechen leadership. Over time, this hybrid approach has the potential to warp regional power structures across entire Russia. Right now, many shrug it off, but sooner or later it becomes impossible to ignore that Kadyrov is not some kind of provincial loyalist. I mean, isn't it too obvious at this point anymore? No, he's playing chess, turning every trainee into another piece on the ground board. Before I continue, a quick shout out to Ground News. This is not a paid sponsorship, nothing like this. I just want to personally thank them for their amazing series, amazing website. Guys, if you want discounts, if you want some percentages off, please use my link which you can see right now on the screen, ground.news/Russian dude, or you can scan my QR code which also appeared on the screen. Thanks so much. Now let's continue. If Gudermes is the brain of Kadyrov's security project, then VOIN is its muscles. This organization is spreading across Russia under the friendly labels of patriotic upbringing and combat readiness, with a very special focus on teenagers. The Kremlin's obsession with militarizing youth finds a perfect partner in Kadyrov here. But this is not just about ideology. It's about embedding influence into regional power structures and bypassing Moscow's traditional chains of command. At the center of VOIN stands Danil Martynov, a longtime Kadyrov ally, former aide, head of security, and one of the architects behind Gudermes back in 2013. His resume includes senior roles within the FSB and Rosguardia. Today, he advises the Ministry of Emergency Situations on security matters, giving him a convenient gateway to inject Chechen doctrine into the new layers of the state. VOIN army has already appeared in at least a dozen regions, including Yamal-Nenets and Murmansk. Officially, these centers promote discipline, patriotism, and personal development. In practice, they just normalize Kadyrov as a parallel authority, an alternative guarantor of order and security. Over time, these cells could mature into paramilitary groups loyal not to Moscow but to Chechen interests. And among young people, that shift in allegiance is especially dangerous for Putin's already unstable pyramid of power. The connections are no longer subtle. The head of VOIN's Murmansk branch, Alexei Chufirov, attended an intensive 10-day training program in Gudermes, where he learned advanced shooting techniques and drone warfare. These are not skills taught in ordinary youth clubs, and instructors, Chechen commanders, directly linked to Kadyrov himself. So you can definitely, guys, be rest assured that in between the shooting drills, they also talk to these teenagers about the greatness of Chechnya. This pipeline between northern Russia and Chechnya is not accidental. It's a deliberately constructed corridor for exporting influence and loyalty. And even though Chechnya is located in the southwest of Russia, it reaches the most distant northern regions. That is how wide Kadyrov casts his net to get as many potential recruits into his private military. Let's talk about some of these regions in our next chapter. Beyond formal structures like Gudermes and VOIN, Kadyrov has also established Chechen representation offices in key regions. Murmansk hosts one such office led by Aslanbek Asayev. He's not a ceremonial figure, no, he regularly meets with Governor Andrei Chibis and maintains close contact with local security officials. This is precisely how shadow hierarchies are built. When your people interact constantly with regional elites, you shape decisions from behind the curtain. You influence narratives. You quietly reroute power away from Moscow. Asayev previously lived in Norway, and part of his family reportedly still does. And just this detail may seem minor, but it highlights how exactly Kadyrov's network extends even beyond Russia's borders. The fact that Asayev returned to Murmansk to run this office shows careful planning. Place loyal operators in strategic regions, cultivate official relationships, and wait until Moscow is too distracted to push back. And then you can act. And distracted it is. The war in Ukraine absorbs resources, attention, and political capital. That leaves little time left to monitor every slow shift in regional power. For years, Putin has relied on Chechen forces as instruments of fear and control, both in the Caucasus and elsewhere. But there is a cost to outsourcing repression. The more power you hand to an ambitious warlord, the stronger he becomes. In effect, Putin has helped create a rival concentration of power inside Russia itself. Tensions between Moscow and Grozny are already visible at the edges. If economic pressure mounts and political instability weakens further, those cracks could widen fast. And with no end in sight of the war in Ukraine, the Kremlin may find itself unable to fully control Kadyrov, especially in distant regions like the far north. When you delegate an authority to a tyrant, you should not be surprised when he starts writing his own rules. It would be naive to think Kadyrov's ambitions stop at training camps, youth militias or regional offices. Ingushetia has long been a target. His rivalry with its leadership goes back years. In 2019, for example, he forced through a territorial transfer that stripped Ingushetia of roughly 10% of its land, triggering mass protests. And now, instead of grabbing territory outright, Kadyrov is shifting tactics. He's turning to religion. Multiple reports indicate that his Mufti Salah Mihiev has held talks with Ingush Muslims in Cairo about creating a new religious authority in Ingushetia, one aligned with Chechnya. While some regions have multiple Islamic institutions, this move appears designed to replace the existing Ingush Muftiate entirely. It is classic divide and rule. Control the religious structure and you gain leverage over both spiritual and political life. Local leaders in Ingushetia seem hesitant, perhaps divided, perhaps too weak to resist, but the consequences could be explosive. After the trauma of 2019, many Ingush already distrust the authorities. A Chechen-backed Muftiate would look like absolute and outright betrayal. In a region as volatile as Ingushetia, imposing an external religious authority is like striking a match in a fuel depot. Even the Kremlin must understand the risk. Renewed unrest there would not stay contained. It could ripple across the entire North Caucasus and then Russia. Add Kadyrov's past statements about absorbing neighboring territories, and the picture becomes even darker. Yet, Putin remains completely consumed by Ukraine, unable or unwilling to confront the danger forming on his southern flank. If Ingushetia erupts again, it will not just be local anger, it could signal a broader rejection of Moscow's authority, opening the door for Kadyrov to thrive into this chaos. Well, there you have it, guys. If you haven't done so already, please subscribe to my channel for more news like this. Happy weekend. You can join our private Telegram group by becoming Patreon or YouTube channel members. The links are down below. Thanks so much for watching. See you on Tuesday.
All they cannot quell. We see through their lies, their feeble attempts to sway.